Welcome to Sports Beat KC, presented by Big O Tires. It's Friday, January 10th, and I'm your host, Blair Kirchhoff. I think the only way not to lead an episode this week with the Chiefs is to have a college basketball game matching top 5 teams, and that's what we have Saturday, with third-ranked Kansas taking on number 4 Baylor at Allen Fieldhouse. I caught up with KU beat writer Jesse Newell to break down the game that could produce the early favorites in the Big 12 race. But this is not a Chiefs-free podcast. After a break, we return to a discussion from Thursday's podcast involving Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. He interviewed for 3 NFL head coaching jobs last week, and those positions went to other candidates. This after interviewing for 4 jobs last year. After the break, you'll hear from Bieniemy, who was asked about his coaching future at his media availability on Thursday. That'll be followed by the discussion that concluded our Facebook Live on Thursday among Herbie Teope, Sam McDowell, Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian. But first, here's Jesse Newell on KU-Baylor. Hey, Jesse, how you doing?
Doing good, Blair. How about yourself?
Doing good. For a second week in January Big 12 game, we got quite a good one at Allen Fieldhouse on Saturday at noon when Baylor comes calling. This is third-ranked Kansas against fourth-ranked Baylor. Quite the matchup. Maybe in terms of national ranking, outside of the Champions Classic, and there may be one or two others that I'm not thinking about, just in terms of a matchup, this is as good as it gets in the regular season.
Yeah, especially you add a little bit of stakes in there when it comes to the conference race. And for Baylor, there's some of the storylines, too, about how Baylor's never won at Allen Fieldhouse. They haven't been able to get that monkey off their back, and Scott Drew in particular has not been able to come to Lawrence and get a victory. So you add all those things on top of it, and I'm sure we'll get into this, Blair, but this is sort of important for the Big 12 race. It feels sort of like Kansas has established itself as the dominant team in the conference, the heavy favorite here, and really the only way, or maybe one of the only ways you would envision them not winning it is if either Baylor or West Virginia was able to sweep them. Well, we know West Virginia can't sweep them because they lost at Allen Fieldhouse last week. And if Baylor's not able to win this game at Allen Fieldhouse, KU at 3-0, I think they'd feel really good about their chances just because the middle of the Big 12 seems a little bit down from some years past. And Baylor seems like it could make a run, but it definitely could be helped if they're able to take both games against Kansas.
For sure. And I think the Baylor record at Allen Fieldhouse, I think, is 0-17. That's quite the goose egg. A lot of teams have been able to come into Allen Fieldhouse and get them once, maybe just once or twice in the Big 12 era, but Baylor is not among them. So what's going on? I look at some of the stats, the defensive efficiency stats and points per game, scoring defense, that sort of thing. We know what kind of season Kansas is having on the defensive end, but it seems like Baylor has been able to match Kansas in that way and maybe doing it a little differently with their guard play. This is an interesting Baylor team that has beaten 4 ranked teams. I think Baylor's the only team in the country that's defeated 4 AP top 25 teams, and they're doing it like Kansas with defense.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And Bill Self just got done talking about Baylor here today, and he credited basically the backcourt, saying that they've started to a little bit set the pace. And I know Davion Mitchell is one of those guys. He's a transfer from Auburn that's come in and kind of set more of a tone defensively for Baylor when it comes to the perimeter. But if you just look at them statistically, 2 things really stand out. Number one is that they force turnovers, and we know for Kansas that has been a bugaboo at certain times this year where taking care of the basketball has led to some problems, especially in the Duke game. We've talked about the 28 turnovers they had in that first game. And then the second part of it is for Baylor is just some rim protection. They have some guys that can protect the rim inside. And this is a different Baylor team than some years past. Scott Drew got the reputation for kind of being the coach that would mix it up defensively, and they'd play, a lot of their amoeba zone and get people off guard, and you kind of have to prepare for that. And, they played a little bit of it this season, and including at Texas Tech in some invaluable moments. But for the most part, they've just stuck with man, and they do what they do. And I just think for Kansas fans, it's, from what I hear and the reputation I hear, I think Scott Drew gets a little bit of a bad rap just because it's sort of weird. If you look at the seasons and if you really study it, the years that Baylor has been good, KU has been really good. And the years that Baylor's kind of taken a step back, it's been those years that KU really hasn't had their best team. So it's just kind of fallen every single year. You'd still expect Baylor to win one game in Allen Fieldhouse, but I think Scott Drew's done a good job of bringing in talent, and he's well respected as an X's and O's guy. It just seems like every year, like 2012, they had a good team, and Kansas obviously had a good team. In 2018, they had a good team, and Kansas had, a really good team. So it's just sort of weird how it's fallen, where it seems like Baylor and Kansas seem to kind of rise and fall at the same sorts of times, and that's meant that all these games that have taken place, Baylor's not been able to be a favorite in one of these games, where if things would have fallen a little bit differently, maybe that would have been the case.
I was watching that Baylor-Texas Tech game from earlier in the week, and we were talking about impact on this game having an impact on the Big 12 race. That was a statement win, I thought, for the Bears to go into Lubbock and win that game, and it gives Baylor a little bit of a leg up, I think, having won a road game against a team that we think is a top quarter or top half type team in the Big 12 in Texas Tech. Tech was ranked, I think, in the 24th in that game. So, that was a tough place to win, full house, great atmosphere, and Baylor came through with a 57-52 victory. You mentioned Davian Mitchell, the Auburn transfer. They have another transfer. I think he pronounces it Maceo Teague, averaging 14.5 points a game. He's a transfer from UNC Asheville, who's having a nice year. Jared Butler, returning player, everybody remembers, is at 16-3, leading the Bears. I find it interesting that we're not seeing the vaunted Baylor zone. I wonder if we'll see some of that on Saturday. I wonder if he'll try to mix it up. And what I want to ask you, Jesse, is how does Kansas how do they approach a team with terrific guards? Guards that they've got three guys that can knock down the three. Kansas, defensively has been fantastic this year. And we've talked about the KU length, players like Marcus Garrett and Ochai Agbaji. It seems to me that the spotlight's going to be on those guys in a big way defensively on Saturday.
Yeah, and not to mention, you talk about Marcus Garrett. He's coming off another ankle injury. He injured his ankle against Villanova and then turned the other ankle against Iowa State. We just talked to him here in Lawrence, and he said, he should be good to go, but he still looked like he played at a different speed against Iowa State when he came back in the game. Didn't look fully healthy, and so that's something to keep in mind too. KU's defense, they do what they do, and it's been really effective because they have that quickness. When you talk about Devon Dotson and Ochai Agbaji, they have kind of the smarts when you talk about Marcus Garrett. They have the switchability when you talk about guys like Christian Brown and Isaiah Moss and even Tristan Aruna with a long wingspan to be able to do that. So they'll switch a lot of stuff up top. That kind of blows up some of the actions that other teams want to do and makes it more difficult. We saw that with Iowa State's Tyrese Halliburton. It was more difficult for him to get off open threes against Kansas just because he couldn't step beyond screens because KU was just switching everything against him. And so he might have different players on him, but because those guys are all at a certain good level defensively, it makes it difficult because, it kind of eliminates some of the things you can do and some of the mismatches you can try to create. So for Kansas, I think they just do that. You continue to switch, you try to keep guys in front of you and kind of play to the defensive skill set that this team has, which is very high. But you mentioned the question mark. And if we look back at the two games that Kansas lost, they were close games against both Duke and Villanova. Both those games, they went against very good guard play, and Devon Dotson didn't have his best games in either one of those. Trey Jones kind of took him down against Duke and had the better game there, frustrated him. And then Villanova, we obviously saw down the stretch, just uncharacteristic from Devon Dotson making poor plays when KU was up 4 with a minute left. And obviously a guy like Colin Gillespie coming in there, getting steals, making big plays for his team. So you mentioned Jared Butler. If he has a big game, that's one thing. But Kansas will give up three-pointers. I mean, that's kind of how the defense is designed. If there's some dribble penetration from guys like Butler, KU's going to step up with Udoka Azubuike. They're going to try to block the shot. They're going to try to make it very difficult. So for Baylor, you try to create a little bit of create an angle, create a little bit of defensive rotation, and then if you can make 2 good passes in a row, you're going to get an open 3 somewhere. And if you can knock those down, that's really a way to take down KU's defense. It's hard to do. I mean, there's not many teams that can do that have a guy that can dribble penetrate, that can kick out, and have another guy who can pass it and go hit your open 3-point shooter and then have that guy make the shot. That's, it's almost like baseball, Blair. We talk about, if you hit a ground ball, you got to field it, catch it, throw it. And if you hit a fly ball, you got to catch it. There's a lot of different things that have to go right for teams to score efficient offense against KU. And Baylor seems like a team that could be able to do that with some of the outside shooting they have spread around. They don't shoot a ton of threes, but they seem to have guys that are capable, and that's potentially a way for them to attack KU's defense. A lot of teams have tried to do that and haven't been able to hit the threes. We'll see if Baylor can do that on Saturday.
You mentioned Villanova. That's one of the teams that Baylor defeated this year. So at least in the one area where there's a common opponent, Baylor has a leg up there. Hey, give me a thought on Christian Braun. His role has changed, hasn't it? Since just in the last week, it seemed like he was pretty important in that West Virginia game, and that earned him some minutes and some playing time against Iowa State. He has taken on a little bit more significant role for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, he has. And you hate to say like an injury is a good thing for Kansas, but when Marcus Garrett went down with that first ankle injury against Villanova, it forced Bill Self to put in Christian Braun in a tight game, big game scenario, road atmosphere, and Christian Braun was great. And so this is kind of how it happens with Bill Self. You kind of have to earn his trust, but you have to earn his trust by playing in games. If you don't get him any minutes, then it's hard to earn the trust because you're not getting opportunities to earn the trust. So when he was sort of forced in there, he gained confidence and gained his coach's confidence in him. And then you mentioned it. When there was a toughness game against West Virginia, Bill Self went with Christian Braun for the final 20 minutes. And, Christian Braun, he's not a complete player yet. He's a guy that still hesitates on some shots. He's not as aggressive offensively sometimes as other guys just because he's a freshman and he's new in there. But what he does really, really well is he is just fine being a glue guy. He's just fine being a person who can come in there and be happy making other players play better. And he's really good with loose balls. He's kind of one of those, Bill Self would call it a junkyard dog in there. Yeah, there was a free throw miss recently. I think it was Udoka, and nobody went to go get the rebound in the West Virginia game except for Christian Braun. So he went under the basket, got it, threw back to Udoka. Udoka, makes another 2-pointer. It's a 4-point possession for Kansas, and those are the sorts of small things that, the gaining of possessions that Bill Self loves. And so, listen, KU has Devon Dotson. They have Udoka Azubuike. They have Ochai Agbaji. They have enough guys in there that can shoot the basketball or be offensive go-to guys. When you fill out the rest of your 5-man lineup, you sort of need guys who can step in there and fill roles. And so that's why Marcus Garrett is a great fit on this Kansas team. And that's why Christian Braun potentially moving forward can do that. If he can hold his own defensively, be a good loose ball guy, be a good hustle guy, and really fit in with the other pieces around him, then he doesn't have to be the most talented player to fit this roster the best when it comes to playing with guys like Dotson, Azubuike, and also Agbaji.
All right, boy, I tell you what, if Baylor can pull this one off on Saturday, what a week it will have been for the Baylor athletic program. The women's team just knocked off top-ranked Connecticut, ending the Huskies, I think it was 98-game home floor winning streak. Baylor lost its football coach, Matt Rule, this week to the Carolina Panthers, so in the market for a football coach. This after playing in the Sugar Bowl for the football program. Women's volleyball team played in the Final Four this year. Things are coming up Baylor Bears all over the place, and I think a win at Kansas would be quite an accomplishment for Scott Drew and the Baylor program. The winner will have the loser will have its first Big 12 loss. I think the winner, you might be able to just say the winner would be the favorite in the Big 12 race. Really early. It's only the third game of the season, 18-game conference schedule, but it'll go a long way, I think, in determining a favorite anyway for the league race. So, hey, Jesse, thanks for hanging out, and we will see you soon.
Sounds good, Blair. Appreciate it.
If your steering wheel has more traction than your actual tires, that's a big O no. Thankfully, for all your car's big O no's, there's always a big O yes. Now through February 2nd, buy 3, get 1 free on select sets of 4 Aspen Touring AS or Mesa AP2 brand tires with paid installation purchase. Big O Tires, the team you trust. Disposal fees extra and up to 10% shop fee based on non-discounted regular retail price not to exceed $35 where permitted. See store for pricing. Eligibility may vary. Not valid with other offers. At participating locations, no cash value.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/sportsbeatkc offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy met with reporters on Thursday, and a popular topic was his interview tour of NFL head coaching positions. Here's what Bieniemy had to say about the process. And after Bieniemy, you'll hear from the Stars Herbie Teope, Sam McDowell, Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian.
You have reportedly gone through 3 more interviews this year. What will happen is still one job open, still remains. But do you have any comment as to whether or not the Rooney Rule is working, whether it's doing what it was designed to do, and whether African-American coaches are getting the opportunities they should?
Well, I'll say this. I had an opportunity to interview for 3 jobs. And one thing I can say, I had a great process, a great discussion. Each and every interview is different. But at the end of the day, now all of my focus has turned on to what? The Houston Texans. It's time to make sure that our guys are ready to go to work, but also understanding the importance of what's in front of us. All right? So, all right, to piggyback off of that, yes, it's a blessing. It's always great to be mentioned. It's always great to have that opportunity to be considered in those roles. But when it's all said and done with, I work for a great organization. I work for a great boss. I work for a great owner. And on top of that, okay, we got some great people in this building. And we're going to go out there and line up and play against these Texans.
Listen, I know we've had a discussion. I'm here to ask the questions. I know this isn't your preferred line, but
Okay.
you're the guy you're the tip of the spear right now, right? I mean, is the Rooney Rule working, yes or no?
Like I said, I had an opportunity to interview, okay? That should say it all, you know? It was a great conversation. Now it's on to the game.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from either those teams or other people, friends of yours in the business after these interviews?
And here's the thing, and I'm going to put this out there. It's time to play against the Houston Texans, all right? You guys got to understand it. You guys know me, all right? My focus is on the Houston Texans, all right? One thing I want our guys to realize, we don't want to go backwards to have to go forward. Meaning what? First of all, remember that feeling that we had when we came in here after that New England game, right? That's not anything that we want to have, right? So we got to make sure we're eliminating all the distractions. We got to make sure we're mentally and getting physically prepared to play against our opponent, who's a hell of an opponent, okay? He did a hell of a job, right, against us early in the season, and hell, it showed this past weekend too. So at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that we're making the most of this opportunity that's being presented today, all right? So what took place over the weekend or all the other stuff, that don't matter. It's time to go play ball.
One topic we didn't cover that I think will be a subject of a story here. Eric Bieniemy, head coaching job. Let's just say it's not going. Doesn't look like it's going to happen for him this year unless the Cleveland Browns pull off an upset and hire him, which I actually think would be a pretty good place for Eric Bieniemy. But will Eric Bieniemy be a head coach by the end of next season? Because it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. Washington, Carolina, New York Giants, Cleveland Browns all opened up. And he's still, and he interviewed and the Cowboys, right? So 5 jobs. He interviewed for several of them.
3 that we know of.
Yeah.
This year.
And didn't get jobs. So will Bieniemy be a head coach by the end of the 2020 season?
That's the million-dollar question, because to me it's a head-scratcher that Bieniemy has not been hired. And I know, like with Judge in New York, they called Bill Belichick, and Belichick gave a ringing endorsement. But to me, when you have Andy Reid publicly given Bieniemy a ringing endorsement, he's a leader of men. He can motivate a team, and we've all been around Bieniemy. He's a fiery kind of guy. He seems to me like a coach's kind of player. A lot of players who didn't even play for him were taking to Twitter. Reggie Bush tweeted out he's ready for a head coach job. I know this guy. I don't know if he's going to have a job, because I thought he'd have a job this year. I thought we would all be writing about Team X hires Eric Bieniemy, Chiefs now looking for another offensive coordinator. So I don't know. I don't know what the teams are looking for. If you're looking for a leader, why hasn't Bieniemy had a job yet?
How about the idea of, Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year, Andy Reid steps down, Eric Bieniemy becomes the head coach.
Are you putting that
Sam will not dignify that.
I don't see that happening.
Okay.
But I agree with Herbie. I mean, and also with your point about the Cleveland Browns, while it may not be the best spot for him, because I don't think that's the best spot for anybody.
For any human.
It might be one of their best options because, the quality that Andy Reid keeps talking about is this leader of men phrase. And, of course, what does that really mean? But he's got a presence with those players. And Cleveland needs somebody that has a presence with those players because they need some discipline. And I think Eric Bieniemy would provide that, if nothing else. And I know that there's the question of, he doesn't call the plays, so how much does he really factor into the offense? But you've had other guys that had that same question. I mean, Doug Peterson went and won a Super Bowl.
Andy Reid never called plays.
Exactly.
when he got his job.
He was never even a coordinator.
Yeah, but Doug Peterson is, that's the example to me. The guy knows offense, and if you talk to whether it's Mahomes or Matt Moore or Chad Henne, he's working with the quarterbacks. Like it's not just he's still the running backs coach, and that's it. And I keep going back to the Kareem Hunt situation, and because it's coaches can present this veneer of discipline, of authority, and all that stuff. But what happens when that gets challenged? What happens when you set a line and somebody steps over it? That was a star player, an important piece of the offense. And he was gone because of what happened with Eric Bieniemy and Kareem Hunt, that Kareem Hunt lied to Eric Bieniemy. That's why he's gone. And I think that's the part too. When you can bring the hammer and still have the players talk about you the way they talk about Eric, I mean that's gold. And I would just underline what Herbie and Sam both said about doesn't it seem like that's what the Cleveland Browns need? Yes. And now I'm forgetting. I think Sam, you just said it. I don't know if it's Eric's best spot because I don't know if you want to work for that owner. If you just look at the history that they've had with GMs and coaches both, but they got a good quarterback. They got a hell of a lot of talent around them. They've got Kareem Hunt. that would be an interesting sort of sub-story or whatever. So it'd be a great situation for the Browns, I think. But it's just look like we're nobody's mentioned it yet, but there's a fact that black coaches are not getting hired at near the rates that white coaches are.
Especially offensive.
Yes, and I don't know. I don't think there's outright racism. I don't think that, but I think that there is a case to be made that there is a subconscious, sort of boys network, look like me kind of thing. I mean, that's how it's happened. Whether it's direct or indirect, that's part of this equation as well.
Sam made this point we were talking the other day. I mean, you might look at each individual case and say, okay, you can see why they made that choice. But when you take the whole body of it, it's 7 interviews now.
In 2 years.
In 2 years.
7 out of 31 teams.
And I guess we don't rule out that he might get the Cleveland thing until that is ruled out. But so then you look at what his profile is, and 2 things on his profile that are different, I guess, are the race, but also running backs history as opposed to quarterbacks history before these last 2 years, right? Peterson had been a quarterback. He'd worked with quarterbacks. He'd been an offensive coordinator. Nagy had worked with quarterbacks before he was coordinator. Which one of these you want to choose as a reason, at least on the profile? And I think you can see what you want to in it, but it's hard not to be distressed a little bit about the rate of hiring of African American coaches.
Right. The other thing you hear is no head coaching experience either at the college or pro level, but
come on.
Yeah, come on. That's not a reason anymore.
Guys
can't use that.
Yeah, guys are getting jobs from being a quarterback's coach or a special teams coordinator. I mean, there's look like Ron Rivera and Bruce Arians, Mike McCarthy. I mean, there have been it seems like somewhat more retreads or guys getting a second chance, but there's still Joe Judge. Nobody had ever heard of him before.
Yeah. Had to Google him.
Zach Taylor. I mean, there's a lot of examples.
Cliff.
Cliff Kingsbury got fired. Just a failed college coach that went below 500, and now an NFL. That's amazing.
Didn't win with Patrick Mahomes.
And that's the thing too. Is I feel like there's some of some of what you see is of course Bieniemy's the offensive coordinator of this offense has been terrific. He's got Patrick Mahomes. Well, so did Kingsbury.
Right.
And the Big 12's not as tough as the NFL.
Well, I'd love to see Eric Bieniemy and Dave Toub someday become NFL head coaches. Both of them absolutely deserve it. That wraps up another week of Sports Beat KC presented by Big O Tires. Thanks to Randy Mason for producing today's show. The next time you'll hear from us is Monday, when we'll be back to talk about the Chiefs' divisional round playoff game against the Houston Texans. Thanks for listening.